Hello. In chapter 18, we found out that the girl with the blue streak in her hair was called Alice and that her parents had sadly been taken in one of the pauses. This made Hamish wonder whether his dad had been taken in a pause as well, rather than leaving them. Chapter 19, Revenge. Several hours later, Hamish crouched outside number 9 Knotweed Lane with a determined look on his face and a piece of paper in his hand. On the paper were the words, Plan 1, Part 2, B. Get that watch. He was hiding in a bush outside Grenville's house and had been hiding there since 5:30. It was starting to get rather uncomfortable. He hoped that Alice Shepherd had been right and that the next pause was coming, and soon, because honestly, his bottom was so numb you could use it for bongos and he'd never notice. While he waited, Hamish looked up at the house. Even though it was the same as all the other houses on the street, the Byles had somehow managed to make theirs look rather more fearsome. Apart from the single spiky bush that Hamish was currently crouched inside, the garden had been concreted over and there was a jagged metal fence at around kid height. The roof tiles were wonky and covered in black moss. The sun never seemed to shine on this house. Tabitha, postmaster Byle, had put up thick, dusty black curtains in every room and she never, ever opened them. Grenville said it was so they could protect their many treasures. He didn't want any old person peeking through his windows and checking out his super action rascals, and the black curtains stopped harmful UV rays from fading his priceless collection of original movie posters too, which was handy. Flash! Alice had been right. Cautiously, Hamish tiptoed from the bush and tapped the doorknob gently. He'd heard that the postmaster had wired up all the electricity in the house so that if someone turned up unexpectedly and tried the handle, they'd get a nasty shock and their hair would catch fire. It seemed safe enough today, so he tried turning it. He was in. Grenville's hallway was packed with dozens of old, faded oil paintings of the Byles from history. There was Lord Hieronymus Byle with a huge great beard the size of a stoat. Oh, hang on. No, it was a stoat. A stoat the size of a beard. Hieronymus Byle and his associates had been the terror of old London, training stoats to pretend to be beards so they could pickpocket people's top pockets. And there was Dame Violet Byle, inventor of Waterway wart juice. She'd claimed her wart juice warded away warts, when all it actually did was herd them all together and form one big giant wart. There was Billy Byle, the Billericay bicycle burglar. There was Bernie Byle, the big badger baiter of Bow. And there was Bunty Byle, the part-time estate agent from just outside Stockport. Men, women, short, tall, long hair, short hair, bearded or with stoats, it didn't matter. They all seemed to have the exact same mean face as Grenville. Hamish shuddered and looked around. There was a green door at the top of the stairs with loads of grubby handprints all over it and a big sign that said, Keep out. I mean you. Yes, you. Yes, you're the one I'm talking to. This is Grenville's room, and yes, I mean you. For a second, Hamish was stung by the tiny iota of jealousy. How come Grenville had it all? All those toys to have all that fun with. How come he deserved cool things and Hamish didn't? He pushed open the door to what he was sure would be an Aladdin's cave of wondrousness, only to be rather surprised. Grey walls, grey floor, a grey ceiling, a plain bed with one lumpy pillow and a rather limp grey duvet, and no toys. No complete set of super action rascals, no big screen TV, no computer, no books, no chairs, no posters, no colour and no fun. There was a dirty-looking desk that just had one book called The World's Funniest Tractors lying open and a half-filled jam jar marked Fruits of My Nose. Grenville's prized El Gamba wrestling mask was hung up rather proudly on a bent brass nail in the wall. Where was all the stuff he was always banging on about? The stuff he always said made him better and cooler than everyone else. Wait, do you smell that? There was the worst, most awful smell in the air. It was putrid. It was gaseous. It was stomach-churning. And it was hanging there, frozen in time. It was almost wet in the air, like it was coating Hamish's face with a thin gel of awful. Imagine how an aeroplane weaves a vapour trail in the sky long after it's flown by. Well, it turns out that's how smell was when it became trapped in the pores. Hamish found he was able to actually step in and out of it, and he preferred stepping out of it. Hamish didn't want to follow that stink, but bitter experience told him he'd find Grenville at the end of it. Down the dark and rancid hallway he walked, peanut shells cracking underfoot like they were bones in a forest, until he came to another door. He pushed it open, but realised immediately that this wasn't the one he was looking for. Inside the dimly lit room, under a brown chandelier, between a brown set of walls and on a bright green carpet, was the postmaster herself. She sat at a dark wooden table and looked as if she had probably been mid-grunt when the pause struck. She was so close that Hamish could see the tufts of black wiry hair sprouting from the moles on her arms like spiders hatching from a bumpy thick egg. 6 or 7 flies hung still in the air around her, stuck in the smoke from her nasty fat cigar. She had a bowl of peanuts and a spoon, and she was surrounded, absolutely surrounded, by brightly coloured parcels. Christmas presents, birthday presents, wedding presents, all of them piled high. They were stacked up on top of one another, crammed into cubby holes and spread out all over the floor like a present puddle. Hamish could see some of the labels. To Astrid, love Granny. To Robin, from wee Uncle Tony. So many of them. There must be every present that had ever been lost in the post for months. Oh, the biles were awful. Above the postmaster's head was some kind of giant map of Starkley. It had dozens of thick red arrows pointing up and down and left and right, from the old grey bridge in the woods right the way to the clock in the middle of the town. Roots was scrawled at the top of the map in big red letters. Must be for the postman, Hamish thought. But why would they need to cross the old grey bridge? The only thing beyond that is the cliffs. Hamish took a step back to get a better look at the map, but as he did so, he caught a whiff of that smell again. It seemed to lead to the room next door. Curious, he followed the whiff and pushed open the door. What he saw inside was something he would sadly never be able to unsee. Ugh! Grenville Byles' face was bright red as he sat with his pants around his ankles and on a grubby beige toilet. He was straining and sweating and making a dreadful face. His fists were clenched and one hand reached for a scrappy roll of toilet tissue. His teeth were bared and his belly spilled out, resting across the tops of his legs. Oh no, no one needed that in their life. Hamish looked away out of instinct, but then looked back. Grenville had clearly been in the middle of some unfortunate toilet business when the pause occurred, and looked like he was still only halfway through. What a way to spend the pause! On the bog! Hamish decided the right thing to do was simply close the door and leave this boy to his very private goings-on. That would be the right thing to do. But as he began to respectfully back away, Hamish saw the very thing he'd come here for. The explorer on Grenville's chubby wrist. And something inside him sparked and burnt for a second. It was a little bit of fury. "Steal my dad's watch, will you?" he thought, getting angrier. "Chase me through town, bop me on the nose, chuck Colin Robinson in a bush, throw pencils at everybody. Well, who's in charge now, you big red prawn?" Hamish realised that for the first time he was in complete control of Grenville. He could do anything he wanted. So he grabbed the roll of toilet paper Grenville was reaching for and threw it into the hallway. It bounced and rolled away. "Ha! Try reaching it now," he said out loud, with excitement and confidence rising in his tummy. Now to get his watch back. Very carefully, Hamish trod around Grenville and unfastened the explorer, taking care not to touch anything else at all in the grim and gruesome place. Then he suddenly had another thought. Quite a cheeky one, in fact. No, he couldn't do that. Could he? No way. That would be a terrible thing to do. If he did the thing he was thinking of, he'd be no better than Grenville Bar himself. No, he simply could not. Might be fun, though. So very quickly, Hamish kneeled down, grabbed both sides of Grenville's horrible lime green underpants and heaved them upwards as hard as he could. He managed to get them to Grenville's knees, then did his best to slide them across those two sweaty thighs. And then, with great effort and huge skill, Hamish whipped them towards Grenville's bottom as hard and fast as he could. He'd done it. Grenville was wearing his underpants again, wearing them on the toilet. Wearing them on the toilet while not yet finished. Ooh, Hamish did not want to be here when Grenville made his final push. Talking of which, he'd better go. Hamish was giggling when he pulled the front door of the Bile residence shut again. He had his watch back, and he'd taken his sweet revenge. "So," came a voice, breaking the absolute silence and causing Hamish to jump out of his skin. It was Alice Shepherd. She was leaning on the lamppost opposite with a fish burger in one hand and a lollipop in the other. "You came to get me," he said, delighted. "I came to see if you'd get the watch," she said, "to see if you were the kind of boy who'd stand up to his enemies." "Well, the pause made it a bit easier and I needed to speak to you. I have some news, Hamish, and a secret. A very big secret. A very big, very horrible secret." "What kind of news? What kind of secret?" "I just said it was a very big, very horrible one," she said impatiently. "Did you get your watch back?" Hamish showed it to her proudly. "Amazing," she said. "What time does it say?" 6:15. So any second now, flash. Flies in the air started to move again. A bird whizzed by. Somewhere a car horn tooted. This girl was good. And suddenly, from inside number 9 Knotweed Lane, there was the biggest, most deafening, most confused cry of horror you've ever heard. "Oh no!" it went. "My pants!" Hamish put his hand across his mouth. I guess Grenville had realised he'd suddenly had his pants on again. Alice frowned and cocked her head. "What did you do?" she said with a smirk. And as they began to jog away, all they could now hear was the furious postmaster. "Oh, Grenville," she yelled. "Not again, boy! Not again!" So hopefully we'll find out what the big horrible secret is in the next chapter.